My dear friends, this time around we are entering the fascinating world of a 19th century prostitute. And not just any 19th century prostitute, but this one, according to the New York Post website, where I am now reading to you from, says this young lady worked the media like Kim Kardashian. So, oh my goodness. Are you ready, my dears? It was the 19th century, but the French courtesan Valtese played the press like a Kardashian. Louise de Labigne, better known as Comtesse Valtesse de Labigne, lived in a palace in the heart of Paris, inspired a best-selling novel by Émile Zola, and appeared in paintings by Gervais and Manet, worth more than $3 million today. At the height of her fame, Valtese climbed to the top of the social ladder by transforming herself into a personal brand. In The Mistress of Paris, the 19th century courtesan who built an empire on a secret, author Catherine Hewitt examines the life and times of a woman who used a 40-year career in prostitution to escape the grips of poverty and rise to fame. Born to a single mother, de Labigne started working in a dress shop at the age of 13. An eye-catching young woman with blue eyes and red hair, she worked long hours and walked to and from the store alone through the sordid back alleys of Paris. Within a year she fell prey to an older man who won her trust, but eventually took advantage of de Labigne's innocence and assaulted her. Once her purity had been sullied, there was nothing left to lose, Hewitt writes. De Labigne, whose mother was also a prostitute, entered the sex trade, which at the time was organized by a rigid hierarchy. There were the grisettes, young women like de Labigne, who often worked in the garment industry and needed to supplement their meager incomes. The lorettes were considered a step up, because they had one or two wealthy regular clients and the potential to become femmes galantes, or kept women, with apartments and closets full of beautiful dresses. Then there were the courtesans, or grande horizontale, the crème de la crème of call girls. Courtesans moved through the most fashionable society and had their pick of top-tier clients, counts, princes, even kings. De Labigne, who watched these women get treated like celebrities, was determined to become one of them. Her ascent, however, was steep. In 1864, at the age of 16, de Labigne was still just a grisette who catered mostly to students living on the Bohemian left bank. Then, a lucky break. She caught the eye of an influential man in theatre and started performing as a chorus girl at the popular Bouffe Parisienne. At the time, the line between actress and prostitute was still razor thin. But for de Labigne, the stage offered the distinct advantage of publicity. She chose the stage name Valtesse, a contraction of Votre Altesse, or Your Highness, and received her first mention in a local newspaper in February 1866. Her career as an actress, though, never took off. Valtesse also experienced another professional setback. She fell in love. She bore 2 children to a man who adored her, but refused to marry her because he came from a respectable family and his parents disapproved of the relationship. Valtesse vowed never again to let her heart get in the way of her ambition. As Hewitt puts it, the drive gave her the strength to renounce marriage and commit herself wholeheartedly to her social ascent. She left her 2 young daughters in the custody of their grandmother and used the Bouffe Parisienne as a stepping stone to her dominance of the demi-monde. Valtesse seduced the theatre's 50-year-old founder, a maestro named Jacques Offenbach, and became his trophy mistress, which gave her access to his world of banquets, galas and travel. As the quality of her clients improved, so did Valtesse's lifestyle, including her wardrobe. Her background at the dress shop had given her expensive tastes, and she demanded that her lovers shower her with gowns, jewels, hats, art, and even housewares. so that every aspect of her appearance fit in with the image she wanted to project to the world. It worked. By her mid-20s, Waltese had moved on from Offenbach and landed her most illustrious lover yet, Prince Lubomirski of Poland. The prince was rich, and his reputation as a womanizer made him a favorite of the Parisian gossip columnists. For Waltese, who was always looking for ways to raise her public profile, mentions of her name alongside royalty were invaluable. When she moved into a chic new residence, the tabloids speculated that Lubomirski had paid for it. But when the prince stopped being useful, he had, during the course of their time together, squandered his entire fortune on Waltese. She dropped him. She saw men as stepping stones on a path that guaranteed her survival and success, Hewitt writes. Once the support beneath her began to give way, she would spring lightly to the next foothold. Waltese's next benefactor, an army general, spent over $500,000 on her in 6 months. Having amassed a considerable nest egg, Waltese distanced herself from her past even more. She changed her surname from Delebigne to Delabigne, intentionally making reference to a family of aristocrats to whom she bore no relation. She topped it off with a flourish of a title, Comtesse. It was a moment when the class boundaries that defined French society were suddenly beginning to crumble, and Waltese, as a member of the Nouveau Riche, took advantage. She also chose blue as her signature color to complement her eyes, and picked violet as her trademark flower. Waltese was turning herself into a commercial product, Hewitt writes. To finish the job, she gave herself 2 over-the-top nicknames, Rayon d'Or, Ray of Gold, and Ego, and had the latter printed on stationery. Waltese became the kind of woman she admired as a young girl, one who ate dinner at the right restaurants, attended opening nights at the opera, and took long carriage rides along the Bois de Boulogne. She built herself a palace in the heart of Paris, employed a team of servants, and entertained guests in a lavish bronze bed that cost the equivalent of $500,000 today. But she understood that as a courtesan, her position in society was vulnerable. The answer to security? Court good publicity. Waltese befriended artists like Manet and Detaille, who were inspired to paint her. She provided free services to journalists and gossip columnists, who would then go on to sing her praises in the press. Waltese liked to be in control of her public persona, which is why she wrote a book called Isola in 1876. In it, a stunning redhead falls into prostitution after a horrific early sexual encounter. She published the book under her pseudonym, Ego, and, as intended, critics were quick to make the connection. But while Isola caused a momentary stir, it was nothing compared to the breathless media attention Waltese received 1 year later, when the renowned author Émile Zola published his novel Nana. The writer's condemnation of the demi-monde, the book starred a lovely but ruthless courtesan. Nana came from humble beginnings, but unlike Waltese, she was keen to talk about her past. Socially clumsy, she had gaudy taste that revealed her to be a striver. The portrait was unflattering. This bothered Waltese because when Zola was doing his research, he had attended one of her dinner parties at her invitation. Speculation that Waltese had served as the model for Nana only fueled the book's popularity, which sold 55,000 copies the day it was published. She openly condemned the book in the press. Still, she also clung to the notion that all press is good press. Waltese retired in her mid-50s, a grande dame who understood that her work was a young woman's game. By then, she had befriended a handful of up-and-coming courtesans and was happy to share with them everything she knew. She sold her properties in Paris and Monte Carlo and made plans to move to the suburbs of France. She still enjoyed the occasional flurry of press, particularly when she auctioned off the majority of her possessions in 1902, but her focus had shifted. She was finished cultivating her position in Parisian society and had moved on to shaping the details of her legacy. She considered auctioning her famous bronze bed, but at the last minute instead took it with her to Ville d'Avray. Hewitt suggests that the decision wasn't sentimental, but calculated. One last chance to leave the public wanting more. When she died in 1910 at the age of 62, Voltessa bequeathed her most valuable possessions, including the bed, to a number of French museums. Paintings done by her famous friends, Gervais, Manet, Détal, went to the Musée de Versailles, the Musée de Luxembourg and the Louvre. But her intentions weren't selfless. By donating the paintings, Voltessa ensured her lasting position in high society. Each bequest came with an instruction. It should always be exhibited with a plaque nearby, identifying the source as Voltessa de la Bigne. Don't worry, my dears, we're not finished yet. We're just having a quick interval. I want to thank you so much for bearing with me with my congested state. I am soldiering on and determined to bring you entertainment as usual. So, on the left here we have a portrait of the lady in question. She looks to be in her, say, middle 20s to early 30s in that trading card. These cards were very popular in the 19th century for swapping. Rather like my Kung Fu bubblegum cards from the 1970s when I was a kid. So they've been around for quite a while, these trading cards. So there we see her looking quite serious in that portrait. She hasn't yet came into her full style, as we see on the right here. And on the right she looks to be perhaps about 40, in her early 40s. And she's really looking grand and elegant there. She certainly looks like an aristocrat. She's really come into herself with full confidence. These characters amaze me, and I return to this theme again and again. Someone that can actually drag themselves up from poverty, reinvent themselves. And, you know, I mean, she's attractive, but she's not beautiful by any means. But she has managed, through her sheer willpower and confidence, to create a world, and what a magnificent world she created for herself. She made some sacrifices, most definitely, but I cannot imagine that she regretted one moment of it at the end of her life. She amassed prestige and a fortune. I love the fact that she gave herself an aristocratic sounding name. Why not? If you're going to reinvent yourself, you may as well go the whole hog. There's no point cutting corners. Go for it. I mean, these people were like the pop celebrities of the day, weren't they? Anyway, I have found another site with a bit more additional information, so let's keep going. And this is from a website called www.messinessichic.com. I'm not going to rehash any bits that we've already read, but there is some interesting information that this particular site provides as well. And there we have a photo portrait of the beautiful young lady in question. Very striking. You can see why men were enamored by her, definitely. This is quite amusing. The only place more frequented than the Eiffel Tower, according to 19th century Parisians, was the exalted mattress of the Voltessa de la Bigne. So we've been through that. We know that's the same story which I've just recounted. Here we see a very interesting painting of obviously very wealthy businessmen here with the young courtesans trying to catch their eye. So, and this was the Les Lorettes, obviously these young ladies who were between being a lowly prostitute and a courtesan. They were on their way up, so to speak. She lied and said she was the mistress of Napoleon III, says Cheveux, to get her foot in the door. But her big break came when she seduced the composer Jacques Offenbach, who we already looked at, who was basically like the Mick Jagger of the era. Once she'd bagged him, she graduated from the rank of lorette to full-blown courtesan. She met her lovers at the infamous La Perouse. I'll tell you, my dear friends, these French words are killing me. She met her lovers at the infamous La Perouse, a legendary restaurant still open to this day, founded in 1766 to cater to high society gentlemen, looking to spoil their lovers on fine dining while remaining discreet. And here we have the restaurant, which is still open today. This is quite interesting. There were private dining rooms with secret passageways, and to this day scratches can be seen on the room's mirrors, evidence of courtesans testing out the authenticity of the diamonds gifted to them. So there you can see the mirror with a myriad of fine scratches all over, allegedly from them testing their diamond rings to make sure they were the real thing. One of her lovers, the Prince of Sagan, went bankrupt building a swanky mansion for the Voltesse at 98 Boulevard Malesherbes in the 17th arrondissement. I have to apologize, but I'm never going to master these French words. I'm just blundering my way through. Yeah, what an interesting life, my dear friends. What an interesting life. A bed such as has never existed. He wrote about her sleeping chambers when she refused him as a client. A throne, an altar where Paris came to admire her sovereign nudity. Along its sides, a band of cupids among flowers who look on and smile, watching the pleasures in the shadows of the curtains. You can still see the bed today at the Decorative Arts Museum in Paris. It's presented with its sheets disheveled, one of her portraits. Doesn't really make sense. It's presented with its sheets disheveled, one of her portraits. Not really sure what that sentence means. Oh, it's written quite badly, that. What it means is it's presented with its sheets disheveled, and there is one of her portraits also hanging as part of the exhibition. And there you can see the grand bed that was once owned by this young courtesan. Fabulous, isn't it? She never married and didn't want to. Instead, she packed up her fortune and moved to the suburbs of Ville d'Avray to teach her courtesan apprentice, Léon de Puget, and to eventually retire. There was even a bench by her tomb for her lovers to sit and cry, concludes Chevet. She was buried in 1910 with 2 unknown men, ever the champion of romance. In the words of the Voltesse herself, one must love during an instant, as one loves the crimson hues of the sun, at the moment when it disappears below the horizon. And here we have a full view of the infamous bed itself. Isn't that magnificent? A veritable ship of carnal pleasure. Look at it. I love that beautiful green color anyway. Green and gold. They just go so well together. Isn't that fabulous? And that it still survives. She would be so proud looking down that she had this wonderful work of art created, and that it's still being gazed upon by sightseers to this day. Absolutely love it. So, are you interested in learning a bit more about Léon de Puget? Because I know I am, so why don't we go and have a gander and see what she was all about? Are you ready? Off we go. From Folies Bergère to Order of Saint Dominic, the incredible life of Léon de Puget. The story of Léon de Puget, a courtesan, a princess, and a saint, all in one lifetime. And here we have a placard. You'll see that a full view of that very soon, of the lady in question. You might recognize Léon de Puget's face from a vintage poster or photograph. Behind the beautiful woman from the old pictures, there's an incredible story. This is the story of a woman who was a courtesan, a princess and a saint, all in one lifetime. A teenage mother and a victim of domestic violence, Liane de Pougy was born as Anne-Marie Chassagne on the 2nd of July 1869 in Pays de la Loire region in France. She grew up in a nunnery. At the age of 17, after falling pregnant, she married a naval officer, Armand Pourp. Excuse me. Oh my dear, what an unfortunate name. Her son, Marc Pourp, became one of the pioneering pilots of French aviation and died aged 27 in 1914 during World War I. And here we have a photographic image of her son. There we go. Looks very regal there, doesn't he? I love those old overcoats. The marriage of Anne-Marie and Armand was difficult and painful. In her memoirs, she wrote that her husband was violent and abused her, which resulted in scars on her body which were visible until the end of her life. Terrible, isn't it? Some people get married to monsters. According to some reports, when Armand was away on a mission, Anne-Marie began a relationship with Marquis Charles-Marie de Mac-Mahon. What a mouthful, my dear friends. One day Armand caught them together in bed and allegedly shot at his wife with a revolver. When Anne-Marie decided to leave her husband, she sold her piano and used the money to immediately run away to Paris. She left behind their young son, who was raised by his grandparents. Later, she filed for divorce. Even though it had recently been allowed by law, this act was considered a scandal. In Paris, Anne-Marie started her career as a cabaret dancer and courtesan. She performed under the name of Liane de Pougy, taking the last name of one of her lovers. She danced at Folies Bergère and was considered a rival of the Spanish beauty La Belle Otero. And here we see the advertisement, the lithographic poster of Folies Bergère advertising Liane de Pougy. And looks, what a wonderful artwork, isn't it? Isn't that fabulous? Tous les soirs. Isn't that a fabulous? I love the colors. Love the colors. Liane learned the secrets of the profession of the courtesan from the Countess Valtessa de la Bigne, known as the courtesan of the whole Paris, and the owner of the famous bronze bed which inspired the description of the bedroom of Nana in the famous novel by Émile Zola. And of course we've been through that. There's the famous ship of carnal pleasure. And here we have another. Oh, hang on. So this person here is Natalie Clifford Barney. In 1899, Liane de Pougy met an American writer, Natalie Clifford Barney, with whom she fell in love. And this must be the lady in question. I've never heard of her. I'm learning new things every day. That was in the days of the Amazon's youth and of my own. We were passionate, rebels against a woman's lot, voluptuous and cerebral little apostles, rather poetical, full of illusions and dreams. We loved long hair, pretty breasts, pouts, simpers, charm, grace, not boyishness. The passionate relationship lasted for around a year. Natalie was young and curious, and didn't want to commit to a long-term relationship. Yet the two women had strong feelings for each other for the remainder of their lives. Liane described their relationship in the novel Idéal Saphique, which became a bestseller. The love correspondence between Liane and Natalie has been published as a book as well. Here is the book, Adventures de l'Esprit, by Natalie Clifford Barney. At the height of her career in 1910, Liane met the Romanian prince, George Gica. They fell in love and were married a few months later. The famous Liane was much more wealthy than the Prince George, whose family, though they were noble, were impoverished. Yet she honored her new title and as a result changed her lifestyle and settled down. And here we have another poster, Olympia, Liane de Pougy. They were happily married for 16 years until Georges left Liane for a young artist, Manon Thibault, who was also a former lover of Liane. To cheer herself up, Liane took a few lovers as well. Well, why not? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If he's taking up with one, you take up with several, my dear. At the same time, she threatened Georges with a divorce. The prince came back, but their relationship was nothing like before. A nun and supporter of disabled children. In 1928, Liane met and became friends with the Mother Superior of St. Agnes Asylum, an institute which took care of disabled children. Liane supported the asylum by fundraising money among her rich Parisian friends, including Coco Chanel. During World War II, Liane and Georges Gica moved to Lausanne in Switzerland. Well, you see, I never knew any of this. There you go, my little Switzerland here. A lot of stuff has happened. There she met Father Rulewski, a Dominican priest who brought her closer to religion and spiritual life, became her confidant, and later wrote the introduction to her autobiography. After the death of her husband in 1945, Liane joined the monastic order Saint Dominic. She remained there as a nun until her death in Lausanne in 1950. Wow. And this must be the letters that Liane de Pougy wrote. Well, my dears, what did you think of that? I tell you what I'm going to do, because this was an abridged version of her life, and it's such an interesting life, I will continue Liane de Pougy's life in the middle of next month's presentation. I have found a French site, it's written in French, but I'll put it through the translator, and we will decipher, because it provides much more detail about her life, and I think it's very interesting. So we will continue to discover more about the life of this very colourful courtesan. Of course, at next month's main presentation will be something totally different, but we will continue where we left off for the middle of next month. I hope you enjoyed it. And I want to share with you now a wonderful cartoon that was created by Sherry Cartwright. She does some wonderful things with her photo app technology, and she has created this from some very old images and has married them together perfectly. Look at that. I call them skelves. Skeleton elves. Skelves. She posted this on my Discord and also on the community section here on Patreon. Thank you so much for taking the time to make that, to create that, Sherry. I love it. I definitely treasure my resident artists, Amy Keaton and Sherry Cartwright. Thank you so much for that. On that note, I will sign off now and see you the next time. Take care, God bless, and bye-bye, my friends.